A very good evening to you. To another Sweet and Swing here on Max Radio. My name's Howard Kane. Always a pleasure to have your company, of course, on a Friday evening. What have we got? Digging more into the archive from Music Man Towers. The last is here. Harry Hayes and his band. 2 volumes of that. More of our great jazz trumpets. Some Eddie Condon. A bit of Latin, perhaps, for Stan Getz and Eurobim. But to get us going, let's go rambling with the Hawk. After You've Gone, of course, Coleman Hawkins with his group The Ramblers, and of course famous for being an innovator on the tenor sax back in the early day. He sort of played it down quite a bit and said no, it was it was Lester Young who was really the president. He was sort of like the vice president, I think is the way he described it, as bringing the tenor sax to the fore in jazz. And there's a great line I was just reading on a wiki with the commentator Joachim E. Berendt explained there were some great tenor players before Coleman Hawkins, but the instrument wasn't really an acknowledged jazz horn, as it became in later days and is today, of course. And John Chilton, Hawkins' biographer, described the prevalent styles of tenor sax solos prior to Coleman Hawkins as mooing and rubbery belches. Seems a little bit harsh, but yes, Hawkins himself did deny being the first, and he would quote people like Happy Caldwell, Stump Evans and Prince Robinson, apparently. Went on for many years, of course, and played from that very sort of early style right the way through to albums with the likes of Duke Ellington, Sonny Rollins, even John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk. A lot of the modernists, Hawke went on to play with them before a sad demise towards the end when I'm afraid drink got the better of him. And also, if you've ever heard the classic Max Roach album, We Insist Freedom Now, which is protesting about civil rights and black rights as well, Hawke was there on that one. So he crossed the barrier quite a bit from the swing era, which we love here on Sweet and Swing, through to the modernist era, featured of course on alternate Fridays on our sister programme, Jumping In, with myself, H, and brother Chris, if you want to check that out. Wonderful stuff in any case to get us going. Hope you are all well. Spring seems to be in the air. I shouldn't say that too loud, it'll start snowing again if I'm not careful, won't it? A bit cold, but it's been definitely spring-like. Lots of lovely bulbs, some nice days, even a hint of warmth in the sun from time to time. What could be nicer? Plenty of good stuff coming up, and like I said, we'll warm you up with a bit of Latin American sun. And I found a copy of Stan Getz, the classic Stan Getz, with Jobim, the one-note samba. We might have a bit of that. That'll bring some sunshine to your lives, won't it? In the meantime, here's Helen Hume. loving the crackle on that one. Harry Hayes and his band following straight on from Don't Worry About Me, according to Helen Humes, who, of course, was very famous, like so many of these people in her time, but how many people remember the name now? And the answer is not very many at all. Born in Louisville, Kentucky, or is it Louisville? No, too certain. Louisville, I believe it is. And grew up as an only child, father, one of the first black attorneys in her hometown, and her mum was a school teacher. And in an interview, Helen recalled her parents singing to each other around the house and in a church choir, and reckoned that's what inspired her to start singing herself. Yeah, I still sing around the house, I must admit. I forget I'm doing it sometimes. I get told off by the better half from MSAR. And then Harry Hayes, like I said, a couple of volumes I found. The last of the few. So after a long time and several years after the old maestro passed away, and indeed his better half as well, the Music Man Towers has now gone to an owner new to do something exciting and different and give it a new lease of life. So the last of the music has left the building, as they say, and some of it's stored and some of it's gone, and I've kept what I can. There's certainly some good stuff up here which we use for Sweet and Swing, of course, and this is one of the last stuff to come up. A couple of volumes of the legendary saxophonist Harry Hayes and his band. Harry, born in 1909, won a school scholarship when he was 11, and his dad gave him a saxophone and a book on how to play the saxophone, of course. And Harry enjoyed it so much that by 16, just 5 years later, he had his first professional engagement at the Regent Dance Hall in Brighton. By 17, he was working at none less a place than the Kit Kat Club in Piccadilly. I think it's just been a recreation of that recently, hasn't there, for, was it Cabaret or one of the shows showing in the West End of late? They sort of did a recreation of the original Kit Kat Club down by the Strand, I think. I haven't got to see it, unfortunately. I think it might have finished, I'm not too sure. And then 1927 he joined Fred Elizalde at the Savoy Hotel in a mixed Anglo-American band. And then follow that he played at, well, a who's who of all the best clubs in town at the time. Ciro's Club, the Café de Paris, Morris Winnick at the Carlton Hotel, joined Louis Armstrong on his first tour, and Spike Hughes' big band. And then when more really got going in 1940, Geraldo's band, of course, became the BBC dance band, doing 9 broadcasts a week. Harry, the featured soloist, and became really very well known in his time there. Great music. I do love his version of Champagne. I'll dig that out again at some time. Someone else who was no stranger to the war years, and I believe the second band to go into Berlin after the liberation. I think Glenn Miller got there before her, but Ivy Benson and her girls were hot on his heels.
Am I wasting my time?
Tell Me the Truth About Love, of course. Ivy Benson and her all-girl band. Very good book. We'll see if I can get it back from Mr. Wint. I think I lent it to Andy Wint, you know. Get it back off him before it disappears. I think he's moved house. Could be anywhere, couldn't it? An amazing story, and yes, particularly sort of post-war when she kept so many people going and the troops going. And like I said, I believe I'm right in saying they were the second band to go into Berlin after the liberation, after Glenn Miller. And then post-war, it was a case of thanks very much. You can disappear again now, as far as the BBC was concerned, because the men are all back. Yes. Don't know if things have changed that much really over the years, but happily lots of great music of Ivy's still recorded to enjoy. Now then, speaking of enjoying, I had a lovely card in the post the other week. Not a postcard, not even a greeting card, a handmade card nonetheless. Marvellous stuff too, with a picture on the outside, which, well, I'll come to that in a minute, sums up the programme in many ways. And it said inside, "Dear Howard, thanks ever so much for your contribution to radio presentation." Well, you're very welcome. I think it's pretty modest, but thank you for that. Thank you for that praise. The wife and I always enjoy your shows, particularly Sweet and Swing. I like the background that you give about the stars from the past. It brings the world into perspective. Today's top news being tomorrow's fish and chip wrapping. Well, that's very true, isn't it? Then as now, although sadly you can't get your chips wrapped in newspaper anymore. Health and safety gone mad. Perhaps on your Sweet and Swing show, you could do a piece on Louis Prima. Well, that's a possibility. Might be a little bit sort of rock and roll, I don't know. I've heard his rendition of Night Train called the Killer Version. Yes, I've seen that, I think, on YouTube somewhere. The other artist that comes to mind is Ramsey Lewis. Perhaps more jazz than swing. Well, you know, they're closely interlinked. A little fact that might interest you about the Ramsey Lewis track Wade in the Water. It was well played in Northern Soul venues in the late 1960s. And it was the only track played from an album that I know of that interest caused it to be released as a single in 1949, I think that was. Not a problem. The writer goes on, if these artists don't fit into the profile of Sweet and Swing, I enjoy anything that you choose, lots of which are now on my playlist. Well, that's lovely to hear. Also, when I play your show to my 92-year-old mum, she knows a good amount about the music, bringing her own stories about the tunes to life. I asked my wife to design one of her cards in keeping with your show. This is what she came up with. I think it's rather good. Best regards, Linda and John Mullen. Keep on keeping on. And they write from, I thought it was going to be the Isle of Man. They're actually writing from Lessay in France. Terrific. Well, thank you ever so much, Linda and John, for that. Thank you for the kind words. John, thank you for the card. Linda, which does indeed feature, it's got a hi-fi, it's got a piano. It could be Liberace's piano, possibly. No, it's not a candelabra. It's just a light on top of the piano. So a light on top of the piano, some musical notation, a CD, some notes, an old wind-up gramophone on the right-hand side, and a stacking, what would you call it, dansette player underneath. One of those. Remember the ones that used to come in a sort of suitcase and you could stack the records up? A picture of that all underneath, all hand-drawn by Linda and made into a card with little scalloped edges as well. Well, thank you so much. A joy to receive that, and thanks so much for listening, and I'm glad you enjoyed the music, and I'm glad your mum enjoys the music too. What am I going to take from that? Well, how about then, you said you enjoyed a bit of Ramsey Lewis. Wade in the Water might be a little bit rocky, if that's the right word, for Sweet and Swing, as you say, the classic version by the Ramsey Lewis trio. But I found this little jazzier version I rather like. So what do you make to this? It goes on for 4 or 5 minutes, so you've got time to make a cup of tea as well, live from the University of Michigan. They're just coming on stage. Here they go. that was all right, wasn't it? At the modern end of the spectrum for this programme, but none the worse for that. Wade in the Water, of course, the track made famous by Ramsey Lewis and his trio. The track by Donald McCulloch, played there not by Ramsey Lewis, but by a wonderful trio at the Michigan State University. Rodney Whittaker bass, Xavier Davis piano, Randy Gillespie at the drums. And I think it swung along very nicely indeed. And playing that one for our friends out in France, Linda and John Mullen. And thanks again for the lovely card. Here's a bit of Eddie Condon. Love that symbol at the pinch. Marvellous stuff. Mr. Jelly Roll Morton himself. Mr. Jelly Lord was the track, and before that we had a bit of Eddie Condon, Max Kaminsky, Pee Wee Russell and his band, and that was Of All the Things You've Done to Me. If you knew it, you might have been singing along yourself, as if it's of all the things you've done. You could sort of fit it into the music very nicely on that one. Great players there, Eddie Condon on the rhythm guitar, Pee Wee Russell, a master of the clarinet, and performed for the last time before President Nixon. I didn't realise that, 1969, so yeah, I'd be knocking around, I'd be about 7, I think. January the 21st, he was at the White House with the All-Stars directed by George Vine and performed there, and that was pretty much the last time that he played, and that he died the following month. It is Sweet and Swing with myself, H. Lovely to have your company as ever. Don't forget, if there's anything you'd like to hear, drop me a line anytime. Howard Kane at manxradio.com. That's Manx Radio, M-A-N-X, if you aren't not certain. And Kane is Kane, C-A-I-N-E. Or, of course, you can, as did our wonderful friends from France, drop me a card. Doesn't have to be a beautifully hand-decorated card, as we got there. Any card will do. Back of a fag packet. We're not proud. But if you'd rather put pen to paper than finger to iPad or phone or whatever the case may be, why not drop me a line that way? Howard Kane, Manx Radio, Sweet and Swing. And that's Manx Radio Studios, Broadcasting House, Douglas Head, Douglas in the Isle of Man, I-M for Mother 1-5, B-W, Bravo, Whiskey. Wouldn't mind a whiskey now, one way or another. Now that I promised you a bit of sunshine, courtesy of the Antonio Carlos Jobim songbook. And you know what? I said at the beginning we're going to have One Note Samba. We will have One Note Samba one week, but maybe not today, because I was just loading it up, and I just bumped into Sarah Vaughan singing Quiet Nights of Quiet Stars. And I thought, oh yes, I'm just in the mood for that. And it's got an equally nice Latin-y rhythm. Makes you think of warm nights under the stars. A bit of Sarah Vaughan, a little bit of Latin rhythm. What can possibly go wrong? Beautiful.
Quiet nights of quiet stars, quiet chords from your guitar, floating on the silence that surrounds us. Quiet thoughts and quiet dreams, quiet walks by quiet streams, and the window that looks out on the mountains and the sea. Ooh, how lovely. This is where I want to be, here with you so close to me, until the final flicker of life's ember. I who was lost and lonely, believing life was only a bitter, tragic joke, have found with you the meaning of existence, oh my love. Quiet nights of quiet stars, quiet chords from your guitar, floating on the silence that surrounds us. Quiet thoughts and quiet dreams, quiet walks by quiet streams, and the window that looks out on the mountains and the sea. This is where I wanna be, here with you so close to me, until the final flicker of life's ember. I who was lost and lonely, believing life was only a bitter, tragic joke, have found with you the meaning of existence, oh my love. The meaning of existence, oh my love. I love the quiet nights and the quiet
Told you it was lovely and nice and Latin. Hope that's warmed you up a little bit. Quiet Nights of Quiet Stars. Sarah Vaughan with Frank Foster's orchestra. I'll keep that one in the bag. The Antonio Carlos Jobim songbook for a cloudy day. It cheers you up. And I will play One Note Samba at some stage as well in the foreseeable future. For now, though, here's a favourite I know of one Paul Corkish of this parish. He always likes whenever I play. He says, what's that tune? And the tune he's thinking of is Skyliner with Charlie Barnet. I think that was his theme tune, Skyliner, Charlie Barnet and his orchestra, from a compilation on Kaz Records, which also came recently up to Broadcasting House. Now, we've been celebrating some of the great jazz trumpeters from swing, or from jazz to swing, or swing to jazz, depending on which way you like to look at it. We've had King Oliver and Louis Armstrong, Bunk Johnson. Now, here's a name I bet you don't hear that often, Tommy Ladnier. he could play all right, couldn't he? Just no one's probably ever heard of him. A contemporary of Louis Armstrong. Perhaps that's why it was. Louis Armstrong rather did tend to hog the limelight, I suppose. He was so good. And other people, even though he could play, just didn't maybe get that recognition. Anyway, contemporary of Armstrong. One of the best, quite possibly, of the many lyrical great New Orleans players, but like quite a few of them, didn't leave that much recorded evidence except for some early 1920s recordings in Chicago. And the one we've just heard there is a selection from a late 1930s comeback date, which was organised by the French critic Hugh Panassi. And not long after that was recorded, Ladnier died of a heart attack at a pretty young age. And that's about all I can tell you of Tommy Ladnier, and that's pretty much all the information given on the collection we've been using, which is rather fine. Great trumpets, classic jazz to swing. But we'll carry on with that because I've been enjoying that little collection. You learn a little bit, you find some new players and some very well-known players you might have known over the years. We're going to France now for a great collection, 50 Reasons to Love Paris. And one of them might be French music, and perhaps music played on the accordion. They don't often feature the accordion on Sweet and Swing, but we're going to now. That was all right, wasn't it? Not too bad at all. I like a bit of accordion from time to time. Gus Viseur playing the accordion in the 1950s with a track just called Paris, je t'aime, I love Paris. And the rest of the band? Unknown, apparently. No listings and nothing to give, and it's actually listed as Gus Viseur, the rest unknown, other than the fact it was recorded in 1955 in Paris, just as well as it was a place he clearly loved. Great collection that though, Jazz in Paris and Gitan, 50 Reasons to Love Paris. And somehow or other, don't ask me why does the accordion instantly make you think of France? It does, doesn't it? Some great accordion players, but as soon as you hear a few notes like that, you don't think of any other country, you don't think of Germany or Sweden or Britain, you're instantly into France, and more specifically somewhere down the boulevard in Paris. I was there not that long ago, actually. I really enjoyed it. I hadn't been there for a long time. And got to see the new Notre Dame, newly unveiled. It had only been opened for a month or two, with all the work that had been done. And incredible. It's just the sheer amount of work that's been done to bring it back to its former glory. It looks like the whole thing's had a scrub down because all the stone is white and fresh again, and probably looks a bit like when it was sort of first built. Even though they've still got more work going on, but it was an incredible thing to see, and beautifully well organised, I have to be said. There were several queues, but you just sort of went in. Terrific. I mean, you could just walk, you walked in the queues and off you went, and there was a service going on, and you could enjoy all the works again and see all the restoration and read about the work. An incredible bringing together, not just of the French nation, but of all people around the world who, whatever reason, love Notre Dame. Recommend it. If you can possibly get there, go and check it out. Now, did you check out the blood moon recently? It was a bit cloudy, unfortunately. I did go and try and check it, and the lunar eclipse But Cloud got the better of me at Cronkavody. I don't know whether you had more luck, or that Blood Moon. Couldn't find a blood moon, but we have got, just to make up for it, a honey-coloured moon. Brought to you by Henry Hall and the BBC Dance Orchestra.
Life was a thrill for me. The world stood still for me. When I held you that night in the light of a honey-colored moon. That one sweet hour of love bloomed like a flower of love. And your eyes held a bright golden light of a honey-colored moon. A pathway on the sea, shining there for me, seemed to be a road that I knew. A road that led to love, that the moon above had made for me and you. And I knew life had begun at last. We two were one at last. When I held you that night in the light of a honey-colored moon.
Henry Hall and the BBC Dance Orchestra, taking us up to pretty much the end of the programme. The vocals taken there by Hildegard, which was her stage name, and that's what she went by. Generally, it was just Hildegard, but she was Hildegard the Loretta Sell, and started out as an American vaudeville and cabaret star who sang and played the piano, and then appeared with great success on the other side of the pond in Britain between 1933 and 1936, when she recorded with Hall, and also starred in his film Music Hath Charms, if you remember that one. Just a little bit before my time. Nice voice, though. Well, Hildegard about wraps it up for another week, or another fortnight. Jumping in next week with Brother Chris, of course. The modern side of things will be back with Sweet and Swing the week after that. Look after yourselves, enjoy the sunshine if it's out, and I'll see you then. Cheerio.